Pirate God Level Cartoonist, Chapter 161-180. Chapter 161 Teasing Carp. Next to the lucky draw for the catalog of forbidden books, there is an option for the Forbidden World. Next to the Holy Grail War Lottery, the Holy Grail World appeared. In Roja's mind, the devil who destroyed the world and manipulated the rules of the world suddenly appeared in the Forbidden World. There are also those extremely powerful abilities in the world of Xingyu. The 5 magics, the Eye of Death, the True Ancestor, the Magician, and the Heroic Spirit of the Crown. Save money. No, save fans. Ben Uhuang is already hungry. Roja rubbed his hands, his eyes flashing with excitement. After thinking about it for a long time in his mind, Roja turned off the lottery interface and began to study new system functions. Special care about the system. After clicking on the special care system, a familiar interface appeared in front of Roja. It's like a penguin's friend bar. Roja twitched the corners of his mouth, looking at the avatars of diehard fans and the status bar below, speechless for a while. This system, don't learn from the old horse, just imitate the interface, don't learn any membership and Krypton gold. Although the interface is wonderful, Roja is very satisfied with the function of the system. As long as he focuses his attention on a die-hard fan, details such as the other party's location, physical state, latest developments, etc., will appear in his mind. For example, after Roja focused his attention on Carp, Carp's message was like this. Name, Monkey D. Carp. Occupation, Vice Admiral. Physical status, extremely healthy. Close black lens bracket. Location, Marine Headquarters Marine Fando. Latest news, that bastard in the Warring States period. You don't even call me to eat. Didn't the old man just sleep a little longer? Close black lens bracket. Master Carp is still so individual. Roja shook his head with a smile, and then studied the function of the system. Roja found that this system information is not updated at any time, but only every 3 hours. This result made Roja a little disappointed. In this case, when the fight really broke out, he would not be able to fully grasp the other party's information. But to be able to reach this level, Roja didn't want to expect too much. This alone is already a godlike ability. Next comes the most important spiritual exchange. System, how should I use mental communication? Roja asked in his mind. Idea, click on the fan's avatar. Tisk, it's more and more like a penguin. Roja pouted, but still looked for someone to communicate with. Garp, whose latest news became, entered his field of vision. What about sleeping? Roja smirked. Why do you sleep in the middle of the day? Get up and cheer. The mind instantly clicked on Garp's avatar, and Roja suddenly felt that he had entered a dark space. With a shudder, Roja hurriedly lowered his head, but found himself standing on a void. In front of him, there was a light group that slowly stretched and stretched as if it was breathing. From the light group, Roja felt a quiet and powerful spiritual force. I'm really sleeping. Roja hooked the corner of his mouth, took a few deep breaths slowly, and shook his body. Then, Roja suddenly opened his mouth. Cap. The light group in front of him shrank suddenly, and then fluctuated violently. At the same time, Malin Fando, thousands of miles away, was in the marshal's office. Garp, who was sleeping on the sofa, jumped up in a flash. Who called me? Garp looked around in panic, and finally locked his eyes on Sengoku, who was sitting behind his desk and watching him. Warring States, did you call me just now? What are you talking about here? Warring States frowned, with an impatient look on his face. It's fine if you sleep in the office, can you be quiet? Didn't you call me? Carp scratched his head in confusion. I haven't finished my work yet, how can I call you? Zhongguo sighed helplessly. Is it a nightmare? You better go out and find a place to sleep well. Really? Carp asked again, and after seeing Sengoku's stern gaze, he smirked and scratched his head. It's weird, I clearly heard someone call me just now. Is it really a nightmare? Garp picked up the blanket on the floor with a blank face, and threw himself on the sofa again, and after a while, he started playing snoring. Sengoku on one side, looking at Garp's rogue, shook his head speechlessly, and lowered his head to work again. In the dark space, Roha laughed for a long time, and suddenly the ball of light calmed down again, and the mischievous mind could not stop. After the ball of light completely entered the regular fluctuation, Roha snickered for a moment, and then shouted at the ball of light. "Roger! Where is Roger?" This time, Carp, who was lying on the sofa, not only sat up suddenly, but his arms flexed. Boom! The back of the sofa, and even the wall behind the sofa, had a big hole punched by Garp. Garp, who was woken up by the fright, looked at the familiar marshal's office in front of him, and blinked in confusion. No, isn't Roger already dead? At this moment, a hair-raising aura suddenly came from Garp's side. The corner of Garp's mouth twitched, his heart was over, and he turned his head stiffly, just in time to meet Sengoku's unbearable expression. C.P. Get out of here. Chapter 162 Negotiating Warring States. Che, an unsympathetic guy, didn't I just sleep a little louder, so loud? Garp grumbled and walked out. Looking at the door and the big hole in the wall, Sengoku rubbed his temples with a headache. Cap, this guy is really not worrying at all. Shaking his head, Sengoku continued to write on his desk. The new issue of Conan came out, and he wanted to analyze it as soon as possible. As soon as he saw the thick stack of Conan books beside him, there were more than 10 copies of Conan, and Warring States felt a little irritable. Why is this damn comic so long? No other comics have more than 10 books in a single book, but this broken comic has more than 10 books that are still unfinished. The protagonist is still in the first grade of elementary school. If the author intends to draw this little devil and completely grow up to look like Kudo Shinichi, how many years will it take? Warring States silently estimated in his heart for a moment, and his face suddenly became bitter. Warring States found that even if he died of old age, it is estimated that Conan would still be painting. Alas, the Warring States sighed a long time, and he didn't know whether he was sorry for not being able to see the ending of Conan, or was distressed because he would study Conan for the rest of his life. After sighing, Sengoku slightly restrained his thoughts, and then wrote. Why do you think so much? In this situation, you can only publish one book for analysis. Marshal of Warring States. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Warring States' mind. Who? Warring States' eyes narrowed, he stood up vigilantly, and looked left and right, but he didn't see any figures at all. Devil Fruit Ability. The heart of the Warring States suddenly lifted, and a touch of golden light circulated on his body. However, nothing was found. In this situation, Sengoku couldn't help frowning. The abilities of the devil fruit were all kinds of strange, and he couldn't guarantee that he could deal with all the devil fruit abilities. The unknown is the greatest danger. Sengoku's hand quietly touched the alarm button under the table. Don't look for it, I'm not near you at all. In the dark space, Roha looked at the ball of light that suddenly shrank in front of him, exuding vigilant yellow light, and hooked the corner of his mouth. Q. Maybe this will make you less vigilant. Roha paused, then continued. Introduce myself, my name is Roha. Roha. This name was like a basin of cold water poured on his head, which instantly calmed the Warring States period. That Roha from the Dimension Brigade. Sengoku's hand quietly left the alarm button, but he still picked up the phone bug beside him, and tapped the microphone a few times regularly. Yes, it's me. Roha smiled, glanced at the latest news of the Warring States period, and said with some playfulness, General Warring States, is the curry rice at noon really so delicious? You. Hearing Roha's words, Sengoku's pupils shrank, and even the gesture to the commander stopped. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable horror. You know, because of a lot of work, he eats in a hurry in the office, and no one else knows about it except the person in charge of cooking and delivering meals. Could it be that the tentacles of the Dimensional Brigade have already reached inside Murin Fando? There must be a thorough investigation. There was a stern look on Sengoku's face, but he was still calm in his mind, pretending to be surprised and saying to Roha, "How did you know?" Sengoku never imagined that all his mental fluctuations were under the surveillance of Roha. Seeing that the spiritual light group of the Warring States period exudes a faint red glow, and the tone is indeed like a no-brainer, Roha smiled softly. "No matter how resourceful you are, you will not be able to turn the waves in front of me. Marshal of the Warring States, I have no interest in intrigue with you, this time I want to negotiate some deals with you," Roha said slowly. "What's the deal?" Warring States replied casually, and his brain really started to work frantically. Since Accelerator appeared and announced the existence of the Dimension Brigade, the world government has thrown countless olive branches to the Dimension Brigade, but without exception, all of them have fallen into disrepair. The Dimensional Brigade has all the benefits, and the character of not talking about it has made the Warring States mad for a long time, but the strength of the Dimensional Brigade is too strong, and they never do anything, so he can't get the handle at all. But now, the Dimensional Brigade actually took the initiative to come to the door to negotiate a deal. What is it for? Roha on the other side didn't give the Warring States a chance to think. For this kind of intelligent person, he didn't want to deal with it at all. He could do his best not to force it, and he would not be caught. The transaction is very simple. I hope that the world government can spare no effort to promote comics for us all over the world. In addition, Roha paused. I want to meet Vegapunk. Impossible. Sengoku refused without thinking, and after speaking, his tone softened suddenly, as if recalling the Lost Island in the New World. It's okay to promote comics, but absolutely not about Vegapunk. What are you kidding me? It would be nice if Vegapunk let you meet. In case he turned his face on the spot, tied Vegapunk, and let them get it back. Chapter 163 Wronged Carp. It's okay not to meet. I want all the research materials about devil fruits and bloodline factors in Vegapunk. Sengoku's answer. In Roha's expectation, for the world government, Vegapunk's role is even greater than the Sengoku Marshal. The transformation of naval warships so that the Navy can safely cross the windless belt and freely reach the four seas at the fastest speed is of great strategic significance. Studying devil fruit, not only to create the first artificial devil fruit, but also to develop a method for weapons to eat devil fruit. In the future, he will also develop a human weapon called Pacifist, which is specially used to deal with the bounty of over 100 million pirates. You must know that even the Luffy gang in the original book was beaten miserably when they met the pacifists for the first time. One can imagine the strength of the pacifists. There are countless such studies, and it is even said that the frequently replaced new equipment of the Navy is inseparable from the shadow of Vegapunk. One or two generals may be able to dominate a country or even a larger-scale war situation, but they cannot influence the entire world, and their rule over the world government can only play a deterrent role. But Vegapunk is different. Each of his researches will increase the strength of the world government as a whole, and make the lives of the people under the rule of the world government better. This is the value of Vegapunk. Devil fruits and lineage factors. The Warring States period frowned. Although Vegapunk's research was the world's top secret, he still knew something. The two items that Roha said were the studies with the highest level of confidentiality. No, I can't. Sengoku just wanted to refuse, but before he could finish speaking, a voice came from Roha. Huh, Lord Gilgamesh, what are you doing? What, do you want to visit Marijoa? Of course, I heard that there are many treasures in Marijoa, I guess you can like it. What? Do you still want to try the Deviant's sword with the 5 old stars? No problem, no problem, the 5 old stars are so strong, they can definitely block it, you can use it with confidence. On the other side of the microphone, Warring States' face suddenly turned into a pig's liver color. Gilgamesh is going to marry Joa. Still need to use the stray sword. Warring States turned dark, and he had even foreseen the destruction of Mary Joa, the death and injury of the Tianlong people, and the chaos of the world. But, The Tianlong people are dead and wounded. It looks pretty good. Slap. Warring States suddenly slapped himself. What am I thinking about? V. Carrot. At this time, the Warring States also reacted. Roja was 99.99% threatening him, but he didn't dare to bet on the 1 in 10,000 chance. What exactly are your dimensional brigades going to do? Warring States asked with a gloomy face. Didn't I say, I want research materials on devil fruits and lineage factors. Old God Roja was sitting on a chair, eating with an apple in his hand. This is what he discovered just now. In this spiritual space, everything can be imagined by consuming spiritual power, but it is limited to this space and cannot be taken out at all. This time, Sengoku was not busy refusing, but fell into a long silence. Roja was not in a hurry. He knew that giving these 2 research results without authorization was not an easy task even for the Warring States. After nearly 10 minutes, the voice of the Warring States period sounded again. Okay, but what are you going to pay? Warring States' voice was a little weak, and even the brilliance of his spiritual light group dimmed a little. It could be seen that Warring States was very low about his compromise. Well, I will call Lord Gilgamesh back here. What do you think? Roja said with a smile. Boom. The desk in front of him was split in half instantly, and the Warring States period stood there, and his eyeballs instantly turned red. I bought a watch last year and it is super durable. Are you a white wolf with empty gloves here with me? If the Warring States period knew the term hemp sales batch, he would have to say it 10,000 times. That's how you traded, Warring States said through gritted teeth. Ah, I'm sorry, I said the wrong script. Roja's rude voice sounded in Sengoku's mind. It should be Giles de Rais to call Gilgamesh. Giles de Rais, _ In the Fourth Holy Grail War, that anti-human murderous magician. What's wrong with me? If he is sent out, is there any good? Can't kill people for fun. Even if he took 10,000 steps back, could he call Gilgamesh? The Warring States on the other side instantly felt Roja's full of sincerity, and after a few times of violent ups and downs in his chest, he almost forced words out of his teeth. Okay, when are you coming to get the materials? Don't worry, after you get the information, just think a few times in your mind, the information is in hand, and we will naturally send someone to get it. Luo Yadin smiled. Got it. The Warring States replied coldly, and after standing in place and waiting for a while, after confirming that Roja had been out of his mind, he could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. Bastard! Warring States roared, punching through the wall beside him, and the anger in his chest was churning. After decades of fighting at sea, killing countless pirates, and known as a wise general, when has he suffered such humiliation? Moreover, he was threatened successfully. It just makes the Warring States can't wait to find a hole to dig into. Feeling irritable, he simply walked out of the office and walked around. After a while, Sengoku suddenly stopped and his eyes lit up. In front of him, Garp was lying on a bench, snoring. Walking over, Sengoku stretched out his hand to pick up Capra, shaking him desperately for a while. Get up, follow me. Sengoku didn't care whether Garp was awake or not. He pulled Garp by the collar and walked towards the training ground. Hey, what are you doing in the Warring States period? Garp staggered along, looking confused. Practice. The next day, Admiral Sengoku and Lieutenant General Garp practiced on the training ground, and the deeds of destroying the entire training ground spread throughout the Navy. Those who got the news shook their heads in unison, thinking, Lieutenant General Garp, what's wrong this time? Garp, hemp sales batch. The old man did nothing. I was beaten by that bastard in the Warring States period. Chapter 164 New Comics. After withdrawing from the spiritual communication, Roja sat in the chair and meditated quietly. The reason why he asked for Vegapunk's research results, after all, was for Tianjin Yashang's research on human clones. After annihilating the beast pirates, although Roja has scavenged the savings of the beast pirates for many years, the truly valuable things have not been completely collected. That is, the territory ruled by the beast pirates. That is a huge area covering several countries, nearly 100 islands, and a population of nearly 1 million, an area that can bring countless benefits to Roja. Unlike the beast pirates blindly demanding and plundering, what Roja really wants is to let everyone in this area submit to him, treat him as the master, and achieve real rule. In order to achieve this, it is impossible to manage with the shadow manpower alone. In this case, it is very important for clones who are completely loyal to their masters, make good use of various knowledge and skills, and have a certain fighting ability. Although the major forces are now under the deterrence of the Dimensional Brigade, they dare not contaminate this area, but it is only now. If the time is dragged out for too long, I am afraid that no one will stay awake in front of this huge benefit. Even if Roja can completely annihilate the forces that dared to reach out after the incident, the losses they caused cannot be undone. In other words, there is not much time left for Roja. It's time to get Germa 66. Roja looked sideways at the first floor, where Sanji's room was. During this period of time, Sanji's progress has been rapid. Even if he is a pirate of tens of millions, he has killed several. But it's not enough. Roja had no idea of using the Reign of Terror to force Germa 66 to surrender, and even said that he wanted the leader of Germa 66, Vinsmoke Gadge, to work for him. Under such circumstances, a new family owner who makes everyone a decent face is tantamount to a bitter but good medicine. So, how to improve Sanji's strength so that he is enough to overthrow his group of android brothers and sisters is the first question for Roja. Devil fruit. No. Roja shook his head, thinking again in his mind, and soon an idea appeared in his mind. Since Sanji's brothers and sisters all have high-tech equipment, then he will equip Sanji with some high-tech, head office. As for where the high technology comes from, isn't there a comic? As soon as he said it, Roja immediately opened the comic lottery interface. Because there is no demand for the time being, he still keeps this month's comic lottery in case of emergencies. Roja hesitated for a while on the keyword, and finally chose science fiction as the keyword. Science fiction comics will not only have high-tech equipment, but also some technology that Roja desperately needs. In fact, among the sci-fi comics, there is also a comic that Roja wants to get in his dreams. A completely unreasonable black technology comic, Doraemon. It's just that Roja didn't have any expectations for drawing this comic. After all, the chances are too low. The familiar light flashed, and 3 comics appeared in front of Roja. The first book, The Girl Who Traveled Through Time and Space, Roja passed it away without thinking. And the next 2 books made Roja in a tangle. They are Gundam 00 and Knight of Sidonia. Knights of Gundam Dandan and Sidonia. Roja rubbed his chin and thought. If you don't count the combat power and the damn bad tale of Sidonia's knight, it really makes him a little tangled. The cloning technology of Sidonia's knights is already very mature, and has even reached a level that is no different from ordinary people, and the longevity technology of the undead crew members is also very attractive. As for Gundam 00, Roja's face showed a moving look. Mechas can kill men of all ages and have absolutely no resistance. What's more, the mecha in Gundam 00 is not only powerful, but also super handsome. Roja sat in the chair, looked left and right, and was reluctant to see any of them. In the end, I gritted my teeth and chose Gundam 00. Cloning people or something, just be obedient, but it is troublesome to have self-consciousness. As for immortality or something, with System 5.2, he still has to worry about that. It's going to be a mech. If you can't draw the Angel series, make one yourself. Sir, I want to fulfill my dream of turning on armor. Roja, who was in a good mood, couldn't wait to take out the paintbrush and drawing paper, lay down on the table and started to draw. This time, he intends to double open. In just one night, Roja drew a whole 3 volumes of the original manuscript of Gundam 00. The next morning, after handing it over to Monet for her to print, Roha came to Tianjin Yashang's Research Institute nonstop. Chapter 165 Weird Rem. After passing through layers of security facilities, Roha finally entered the Research Institute. As soon as he entered the Research Institute, Roha saw at the door at a glance that there was a blue-haired girl about 1.5 meters tall and wearing a maid outfit standing there quietly. It was maid so soon. Roha couldn't help but smile when he saw the android girl who was made with his own portrait. The girl was wearing a black maid outfit, a white hat, blue hair and blue eyes, delicate and greasy skin, a petite figure, with short neck-length hair, and the front bangs that were deliberately set aside to cover her slightly. The right eye adds a touch of mystery, giving people the urge to lift the bangs and see the whole picture. That's right, the appearance of this girl is exactly the same as Rem from Zero's starting life in a different world. In fact, it's not exactly the same. For some ulterior purpose, Roha slightly optimized Rem's figure when drawing the image of Rem. Yes, that's right, just a little, definitely not a big change. Glancing at the girl's enchanting figure and the raised mountain, Roha walked over with a smile. Rem, Roha called softly. However, Roha waited for more than 10 seconds, and the girl who lowered her head did not intend to respond. Roha, what's the situation? This android is disobedient. Still not finished, just half finished. At this time, Roha suddenly noticed that Rem's head was swaying slightly up and down, like dozing off. Didn't you say you can't sleep, so now this is a fake sleep? Roha raised his eyebrows. Rem, the unwilling Roha called out again, this time he increased his voice. Master. After a few seconds, Rem turned his head slowly, and when he saw Roha, he was obviously stunned, and then he bowed slowly again and greeted Roha. See, Master. Half a beat. Roha raised his eyebrows, although such a girl is very cute, but what's wrong with this? How did Tianjin Yashang do it? With doubts, Roha asked Rem to take him to Yashang Tianjin, and while walking, he observed Rem's body. Cough, physical activity. Fortunately, Rem would not suddenly doze off when he was moving normally. Just boom. Watching Rem slammed into the wall again, smashing his forehead into red, Roha's mouth twitched, stepped forward, and hugged Rem in the form of a princess hug. Master, you have, what, thing? Listening to Remora's long tone, Roha was speechless for a while, and he spoke slowly. Wouldn't it be troublesome to do things in the future? This must be changed. You show the way, I'll walk with you in my arms. Looking at Rem's innocent face, Roha sighed and said. Okay. After speaking, Rem stretched out his finger and pointed in one direction, there. Roha walked over there without saying a word, holding Rem in his arms. Next, Roha experienced another novel torture. Holy shit, Rem actually has to think for a few seconds every time he turns a corner. This is why the flow of time is different. After finally finding Tianjin Yashang, Roha put Rem aside, and pulled Tianjin Yashang to the corner. Big Sir, what's wrong? Tianjin Yashang asked tremblingly. He was going to be scared to pee by Roha. What's going on with that android? Roha pointed to Rem, who started dozing off again in the distance. You ordered a specially customized android. Tianjin Yashang just opened his mouth, as if thinking of something, and said quickly, Sir, I have never seen her, and when I cultivated it, I arranged a separate room, come here. The people who recorded the data back and forth were also the women in shadow, and even the woman who dressed her at the end was 143 women, all of which can be identified with monitoring data. Quote. Well, that's right. Roha nodded, but shook his head suddenly, and grabbed Yashang Tianjin's collar. I'm not asking you about this, I'm asking you, why is that android reacting so slowly? Quote. That's not half a beat, it's already. Roha suddenly covered his face. I don't even know how to describe it. Ah, you said that. Tianjin Yashang suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Because of her special structure, so far, it is still in the final debugging stage. After the debugging is completed, the neural response speed will be improved. In the end, it should be the same as normal people. Huh. Roha raised his eyebrows and looked at Yashang Tianjing with a look of surprise. You can't confirm this. Chapter 166 Rule. Roha looked at Tianjing Yashang with a guilty face, and couldn't help but feel a sense of absurdity in his heart. As the researcher who led the experiment, he didn't know the development data of the experimental subject. My lord, listen to me first. Tianjing Yashang felt that the situation was not good, and quickly began to explain. Although her reaction may be a little slower, it definitely meets your requirements. Saying that, Tianjing Yashang hurriedly ran to the side, came over with a document, and started explaining to Roha by pointing to the information on it. In view of the special role that the android, REM, will play in the future, in addition to never falling asleep and being stunned by negative emotions, I also changed the distribution of nerves and blood vessels in her body, completely avoiding being knocked out. Situation. Quote. It can be said that there is no other way to make her unconscious than to kill her. To be honest, it's the first time I've had such a wide-ranging transformation, so even I can't confirm what she'll end up being like. After finishing speaking, Tianjing Yashang looked at Roha a little nervously. After listening to Yashang Tianjing's introduction, Roha couldn't help rubbing his chin and turned his head to look at Rem, who was in a dormant state. 700. Did she eat the fruit? Of course not, sir, you didn't order, how dare I feed her? Tianjing Yashang waved his hand quickly. That's okay. Roha nodded, continue to adjust. If the final debugging result does not change from the current one, continue to develop the second generation. As for the fruit, I will talk about it after I confirm it. Understood. I understand. Tianjing Yashang nodded his head with a flattering expression. What about the progress of other projects? Roha asked suddenly. It's still in progress, and it's progressing well, but the project about the advent of the new era. Said, Tianjing Yashang glanced at Roha timidly, and finally said through gritted teeth, the plan for the advent of the new era, without the genes of Miss Misaka Makoto, it would not have been possible to complete it with the gene of the thunder fruit provided by Miss Monet. Well, I see, Roha nodded. When it came to Misaka Makoto, Roha remembered that he hadn't heard about Misaka Makoto for a long time, and the last news was 2 months ago. According to that report, Misaka Makoto and the two had already arrived in the West Sea. After learning that the two were safe and sound, Roha didn't care too much. After all, he had too many things to do, and he didn't have time to take care of the two who were on the big adventure. But now it seems that they should be looked for. After leaving the institute, Roha didn't hang out either, and returned home directly. Sitting on the chair, Roha snapped his fingers lightly, and a few seconds later, a man in black came in from the window and knelt in front of Roha sensitively. Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko, where are they now? Roha asked while sorting out the drawings on the table. Sir, report, we lost 2 young ladies. The man in black returned tremblingly. Huh. Roha couldn't help but stop when he sorted out the drawings, frowning and looking at the intelligence officer in front of him. I lost it. Tell me more, what happened? Realizing that Roha didn't mean to blame, the man in black breathed a sigh of relief and explained the details. The 4 Shadow members who were originally in charge of tracking and protection have always followed Misaka Makoto and the two from a distance, and they have followed from the East China Sea to the South China Sea, and then to the West China Sea. However, in the encounter 2 months ago, Misaka Makoto actually awakened her arrogance, and the range of her arrogance was beyond everyone's imagination, and she also had the function of eavesdropping. This time, the unsuspecting stalkers were immediately caught by Misaka Makoto. Although the members of Shadow finally revealed their identities, they were no longer able to follow Misaka Makoto closely, and could only roughly predict each other's movements through intelligence networks in various places. However, this situation didn't last long. I don't know what happened. Misaka Makoto and the two actually began to hide their tracks until they disappeared completely. Now, The people of Shadow are completely crazy. Followed and protected Misaka Makoto, but Roha's order was actually screwed up by them now. The hearts of many people sank at the thought of Roha's iron-blooded means of governing them. Several people involved in the action discussed silently, and finally made a unified decision. Find. Do your best to find Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. As for Roha's side, hold on for the time being, and wait for Roha to ask and when to talk. However, before they could find it, Roha asked. After the intelligence personnel fully explained the situation, the room fell into a dead silence, only the sound of Roha's index finger tapping on the table reverberated in the room. I remember, at the beginning of the establishment of Shadow I set the rules, right? Roha's cold voice sounded slowly. The intelligence officer shuddered, cold sweat left on his forehead, and he fell to the ground in fear, not daring to say a word. I ask you, what's the crime of deceiving you? Roha narrowed his eyes were as cold as ice. Arrest, execute in public. The intelligence officer reached with a trembling voice. What is the crime of mobilizing manpower outside the mission without authorization? Roha's voice, like Hong Zhang Dalu, echoed in the minds of intelligence officers. Arbitrarily mobilizing manpower outside of the mission, putting the companion at risk of being discovered, in the theory of treason, it should be death. The information was not reported at the first time, and the intention was to delay. What should be the crime? On the basis of the crime of delaying the fighter plane, the points will be emptied, transferred to the ground department, and the crime will be committed. Speaking of this, the intelligence officer's body trembled like a sieve. Points are the rewards set by Roha within Shadow. As long as you have points, magical weapons, gold and silver treasures, luxury house beauties, devil fruits, swordsmanship cheats, no matter what, as long as the members can think of, they can consume the points to obtain, and even say that they want to let Roha take action and help kill. It can be said that points are the lifeblood of all Shadow members. But this is not the source of the Man in Black's fear. What really frightens him is Dabu. Chapter 167 Gundam released. Compared with the Tianbu with the top combat power of the Shadow organization, the Earth Department, which is also a combat department, is the existence that makes the two, Zan and Yellow, more fearful. The tasks performed by Dabu are often the most dangerous tasks, and also the tasks with the lowest survival rate, and even the most dehumanizing tasks. Delaying the pursuit of the beast pirates, sneaking into the Navy headquarters to find scientific research units, killing the enemies of your own. The whole family, whether the opponent is an ordinary person or an unparalleled powerhouse, must be dispatched as long as the mission is issued, and the shot will kill you, either you die or I die. It is even said that in the current activities of Marijoya's assassination of the Dragon people, there are people from the Earth Division working behind the scenes. In this case, all the members who belong to the district are either lunatics or fighters, or they are members transferred from other departments, who have committed crimes and meritorious deeds. They enjoy the most fertile treatment, and also perform tasks with the highest mortality rate. How high is the death rate? In addition to the 4 vacancies in the Tianxuan Huang Division 3, the 12 cadres of the Xuanwang Division 2 division have already filled up. As for the 12 cadres of Dabu, there are still 7 vacancies. Their vacancies are not found like Tianbu, but they are all dead. And it's not a few dead, but 4 whole batches of dead. How can such a department not be frightened by the comfortable Xuanwang second department? With their strength, the survival rate of entering Earth Division is less than 5%. That's a good answer. Roha nodded lightly. The order goes on. I read that you are the first offender. This time, I only need the person in charge to die, and the points of the main participants will be cleared and transferred to the district. The rest of the people who do not report will have their points cleared. Add additional staff to search for the traces of Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. If you understand, you can go. Thank you, my lord. The man in black breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that he didn't have to die. After kowtowing a few times to Roha, he left in a hurry. Looking coldly at the man in black disappearing from sight, Roja's icy gaze suddenly dissipated, replaced by deep exhaustion. It's not easy. Roja shook his head and sighed. This time, in fact, it can be big or small. To put it mildly, it is just a small action by the members below under fear, but as a leader, Roja cannot easily spare them. There are state laws and family rules, but there are no rules, so how can there be a circle? Maybe this time, there will be an uproar in shadow, but Roja believes that after the storm passes, the power of shadow will be stronger. But, a wide range of seeing and hearing. Can you eavesdrop? Roja touched his chin and recalled an ability in his mind. Isn't that the heart net of Anilu? Miss Cannon learned this. Recalling the introduction of Shinwang, Roja couldn't help being a little excited. If it is really Anilu's Shinwang, then the strategic value of Sister Pao in the future is simply immeasurable. But whether it is Shinwang or not, we have to wait until Shadow finds Masaka Makoto. The publication of Gundam 00. With his current strength, even if he destroys the world government, there is no problem, but what Roja wants to get is the hearts of the people, otherwise, he will not be able to get more fans. Therefore, Tianjin Yashang's Research Institute has always been the top priority in his plan. Sitting on a chair, drinking a cup of tea quietly, and calming down his thoughts, Roja started painting. 2 days later, the new issue of Dream magazine was officially published. This time, Roja removed a lot of unnecessary content and directly serialized FSN and Gundam 00 together. The capital of Seven Waters, a certain shipyard. Frankie hurried to his secret base with the new issue of Dream magazine in his hand. Recently, the laying work of the sea train has become more and more intense. As a disciple of Tom, the world's first shipbuilder, Frankie also undertakes part of the task. In this regard, Frankie was 10,000 dissatisfied. What's so fun about sea trains? What a great ship to build. If he hadn't been able to beat Tom, he wouldn't have done it. At this time, Frankie, who was still living in peace, didn't know it. If it wasn't for Roja's use of the capital of the Seven Waters as his base camp, and with the prestige of the Dimensional Brigade, he blocked any forces that wanted to spy on this place, including CP9, and I was afraid that Tom would have been executed for carrying the drawings of Pluto. Frankie himself will be severely injured and eventually transform himself into a robot. How can I live a carefree life every day like now? I have nothing to build ships, do things, and go out to sea to shoot a few guns when I am bored. Roja knew about Frankie's existence for a long time, but he didn't make any arrangements, but maintained a laissez-faire attitude and didn't care at all. For these plot characters, Roja has long lost his original curiosity, and the current Frankie has no value for him at all. It didn't take long for Frankie to run to an abandoned pier and jumped into a broken boat at the corner of the pier. After removing an iron plate from the ship, Frankie nimbly got in. This is also his secret base. Not only are there various gunpowder barrels, but there are also countless blueprints and mechanical parts scattered on the ground. Randomly sweeping the drawings on the bed aside, Frankie couldn't wait to climb onto the bed, picked up Dream magazine and unpacked it. I didn't expect that the archer is actually the heroic version of Shuru Emiya. What will be the result of the decisive battle between the two of them? I'm looking forward to it. Frankie was talking to himself excitedly as he opened the magazine. Soon, the delicate packaging was opened by Frankie, and when he saw the cover of the new issue, he couldn't help but be stunned. What is this? The Holy Grail War is no more. This time, the cover is no longer all kinds of handsome men and beautiful women, but a giant mecha holding a sword. Although he was still thinking about the plot of FSN, Frankie couldn't help but gently stroke the cover of the magazine, with an excited look on his face. Is this a robot? Well, so handsome. At the end, Frankie grabbed the magazine with excitement, his face flushed with excitement. Can Angel Gundam, is this the name of this robot? Frankie, who has always been obsessed with machinery, couldn't wait any longer. He turned directly to the page of Gundam 00, and he didn't even look at FSN, who was once obsessed with it. Chapter 168 Turtles, Don't You Understand? At the beginning of the comic, in a modern battlefield, khaki-colored basic mecha and anti-government gorillas fought. The earth-yellow basic mecha, which is more than 10 meters high, walks slowly in the abandoned city. Wherever the footsteps pass, the dust is flying, and the ground is sunken. It is conceivable that the mecha's amazing weight. During the walking process of the mecha, members of the anti-government guerrilla group armed with machine guns or rocket launchers would fire at the mecha from time to time. However, when these simple weapons hit the mecha, they can only burst into bursts of sparks. Even if a bazooka hits the mecha occasionally, it cannot cause fatal damage to the mecha. On the contrary, facing the heavy-caliber machine gun loaded on the rack, flesh and blood a human being of the body has no resistance. In just one round of strafing, all of them were killed, while the mecha continued to move forward slowly. This robot, so ugly. Looking at the mecha that slaughtered the anti-government guerrilla organization, Frankie pouted, but his eyes were getting brighter. Whether it's a heavy-caliber machine gun with an extremely fast rate of fire, each shot comparable to a naval gun, or a shoulder-resistant rocket launcher that is small in size and can be carried by a single person, Frankie is eye-opening. Even the rifle in the hands of the protagonist made Frankie surprised. Compared with these weapons, the weapons he made are simply scum. Frankie, who loves weapons, can see at a glance the significance these weapons represent. Leaving aside the mecha, the firepower of the gun that can fire continuously is enough to suppress a small company in a short period of time and cause certain casualties. If there were a dozen of those guns and a few shoulder-mounted cannonball launchers, no way. The comics didn't write the names of the weapons. That's all Frankie can understand. They could even take down a port. Easily destroy a pirate ship. Whether it is range, rate of fire or accuracy, the performance of these weapons simply crushes the world. You must study it when you have time, these things are so cool. Frank thought excitedly, and at the same time, quickly turned to the next page. In the next scene, when the protagonist was shot to death by the mecha, the O Gundam driven by Levin's Almach appeared, fell from the sky with the momentum of thunder, and shot and killed all the mechas on the battlefield. When Frankie saw that O Gundam appeared with energy wings like an 8-winged angel, his eyes almost burst into light. Handsome, 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 so handsome, I must make this. Frankie patted the bedboard excitedly, his face full of longing and ecstasy. Gundam or something, it's so handsome. Starting today, building a Gundam is his lifelong dream. Suppressing his urge to pick up tools to build Gundam, Frankie flipped through the comics again. The following plot is very simple. At the recent Mecha Conference of AEU, New European Community, the moment when driving the Angel Gundam, the latest mecha of the New European Community was dismembered in a few cuts. Immediately after that, the Gundam Angel Gundam and the Gundam Power Angel, which jointly annihilated the pursuit force of the New European Community, the Gundam Angel Gundam and the Gundam to Angel Gundam prevented the terrorist organization from attacking the space station. And the final declaration of the Organization of Heaven and Man. Our Skywalker's goal is to eradicate war in this world. We are by no means acting for our own interests, but to stand up to achieve the goal of eradicating war. Close black lens bracket. Now we announce to all mankind, whether it is because of territorial religious energy or other reasons. Close black lens bracket. We will begin to intervene by force in all wars. Close black lens bracket. Countries, organizations, companies, etc. that support the war will become the target of our military intervention. Close black lens bracket. A pure declaration of violence against violence. This last declaration did not affect Frankie's mood at all, because he was already numb. If at first, he was only interested in super handsome giant robots, he doesn't know what he should be interested in now. What the hell is going on with this comic? Frankie scratched his head in distress, not knowing where he should complain. The 4 Angel Gundams are very handsome, the mothership of the Celestial Organization, the Ptolemy is also handsome enough to explode. But, what's up with this so-called space? Why are those people floating in the air? What is a rail elevator? He understands the track in the elevator, but how can he not understand it after connecting it together? And that satellite orbiting space station, what the hell is it? It even said that someone suddenly took out something like a small box from his arms, and he could speak as soon as he opened the lid. What is that? New phone bug. Frankie suddenly found that he was like a slut who couldn't understand anything. This discovery made Frankie very uncomfortable. He has always been a master of weapon inventors, the world's #1 shipbuilder in the future, and a world-class weapons inventor. No, I don't want to be a turtle. Frankie's eyes widened, his fighting spirit instantly rose, and he fell down with a plop. He wants to watch it again. Until you understand. As for the construction of the sea train, go to his sister. This uncle is about to become a turtle. Who cares about the sea train or not? There is something to beat me. 6 hours later. Frankie picked up the wrench beside him frantically, and smashed the cabinet beside him with a bang. Ah! Why are those people floating? Why are the boats floating too? What the hell is that dark place over there? It doesn't look like a dark sky. The Gundam, which looks like a 3.1 weight, can fly so fast. What is the principle? And also, why did the sword that the person took out vibrated? Why did the people around them cover their ears all of a sudden? Panting, Frankie looked mad at the smashed cabinet he had smashed. Is he really an asshole? No, this cartoon must be shown to Daddy Tom, maybe he can understand it. As soon as he said it, Frankie grabbed Dream magazine and ran towards the pier. At this time, Frankie had forgotten that because he was addicted to comics, he had been absent from work for a long time, and what was waiting for him would be. Chapter 169 Gundam and Vegapunk. Just as Frankie rushed to the pier, in the naval headquarters, a secret underground facility, there was also a person who fell into the confusion of Turkey. Unlike the young French, this confused man is the chief scientist of the world government, and his science and technology is known to be 500 years ahead of current technology, and is known as a top genius with 500 years of human wisdom. Vegapunk. Am I a bitch? Vegapunk looked at the Dream magazine in his hand, and this question also popped into his mind. But soon, Vegapunk shook his head fiercely. No. Absolutely not. It must be that I have studied too little. Unlike Frankie, Vegapunk not only possesses scientific research wisdom far beyond ordinary people, but also possesses various documents collected by the world government over the years. Among the countless documents, there is the legendary immemorial race that immigrated to the moon, and various documents and materials left behind. By translating the things left by that race, Vegapunk learned very early about the 11 inches space. The existence, of course, in the literature, it is not called space. But now, seeing the dark sky in the comics and the huge floating battleship, Vegapunk immediately thought of that document. After hurriedly finding the document describing space, Vegapunk read the comic again against the document. This time, he understood many details in the comics. For example, all objects float in space. Example, the so-called orbital elevator is likely to be a high-speed elevator that goes straight to space. In addition, those guns that can fire at high speed, portable artillery, and even the extremely powerful Gundams that seem to be able to annihilate the naval fleet are not attractive to Vegapunk. The infantry guns of the anti-government armed forces in the comics, he has been able to build them long ago. As for those mechas, because he didn't know much, really didn't understand the principle, he didn't go too deep into it. And most importantly, he is not very interested in researching this kind of weapon. He is more willing to research and explore various mysteries, or research something that can benefit ordinary people. What this comic really makes him care about is the high-tech equipment displayed by those systems, and the complete technology tree Q*IJC, #pi. Yes, it is a complete technology tree, not like the distorted and empty scientific level of the current world, but a real technology tree that is researched and perfected from the bottom. Could it be that the scientific research of the Dimensional Brigade has reached this point? Vegapunk rubbed the cartoon in his hand, and muttered to himself with his eyes lowered. At this time, a sense of urgency gradually rose in Vegapunk's heart. He really wants to meet Gao Shi, who drew this comic, and even more, the scientist who proposed these principles. Claiming to be 500 years ahead of current technology, he has been lonely for too long. Deduction, he does it alone. Research, he does it alone. The experiment, he did it alone. It can be said that in the entire so-called scientific force, 90% of the scientific research is done by him alone, and those so-called assistants, scientists, are just the existences who lay hands on him. Even if some people are unique in a certain field, it can only be enough to make him interested. Here, he has no one to discuss. They are all stupid and vulgar people. But these in the comics are different. If the above are true, there must be one, or even a team of scientists in that dimensional brigade. A real scientist is no less inferior, even far superior to his scientist. The thought of being able to discuss his scientific research results with others, to ask others for advice on his own scientific research difficulties, and to speak freely with others, Vegapunk's heart can't help but get restless. "Doctor, this is the document you asked for." Suddenly a young girl came over and handed him a document respectfully. "Well, I see." After Vegapunk saw the girl, his excited eyes suddenly turned cold, he nodded indifferently, and issued an order to evict him. Even when the other party bowed and said goodbye to him, as if inadvertently, revealing the deep ravine and snow-white delicacy on his chest, Vegapunk's eyes did not fluctuate at all. Because he already knew the identity of this girl. The espionage agency directly under the world government, the peripheral personnel of CP0, their lifelong mission is to keep him firmly in this scientific force, and in addition to meet all the needs of base 793 plus punk. Well, yes, everything, except that it's bad for the world government. If it were an ordinary person, she might be really bewitched by this trained girl, but unfortunately, she was facing Vegapunk. For Vegapunk, cold machinery and cumbersome drawings are much more interesting than women. In addition, Vegapunk also knew that in addition to this girl, in this secret research institute, there are countless dark suns, killers, and spies, who circle around Vegapunk every day, monitoring his every move. In this case, Vegapunk didn't know what to do. If it was before, he would probably continue to pretend not to know, and then honestly conduct his own research. But now, he wants to go out, go to the capital of Seven Waters, and meet real scientists. Hey, who can save me? Vegapunk looked at the dark wall above his head, his eyes full of helplessness. Chapter 170 Gundam World equals Heaven. Gundam 00 are still being released at the rate of one issue and one volume. Comics that are shocked by the high-level leaders of various forces. Ordinary people are more looking forward to the high-tech life in the comics. Ordinary people in the comics have the ability to take planes and trains to any place in the world, spend a little more money, and even take an orbital elevator to reach the dreamlike space. And that thing called a phone, even in the comic world, one person can communicate with relatives and friends with just a few clicks. Others such as cars, apartments, televisions, water pipes, vending machines, various cooking equipment, cheap and beautiful clothes, and a series of other things, everyone was mesmerized. Ordinary people in the comics don't need to eat bran, or hard black bread that can smash people to death, let alone worry about when the roof will collapse in the heavy rain, and there will be no tragic starvation to death. For the poor people who make up more than 50% of the world, it is like a heavenly world. Under such circumstances, letters from readers like snowflakes poured into Dream magazine from all over the world. Everyone is asking, is it true in the comics? Did the Dimension Brigade really master that kind of technology? If possible, can you share those technologies? It is even said that there are some extreme readers who asked in the letter if the Dimension Brigade has unified the world and then transformed this world into the same idea as in the comics. If so, they are willing to follow the Dimension Brigade. Even Drago called and asked Roha in an excited tone, whether the world of Gundam 00 could be realized. Although Roja did not give Drago an accurate reply, at the end Drago still promised Roja that if the Dimensional Brigade can really transform this world into that, or it can be a little worse than that world. As long as he can do it, the Revolutionary Army will definitely spare no effort to support him. He even said that if the revolution can really succeed, he is willing to help the Dimension Brigade to take the lead. As long as he can create the world of his dreams, Dorag is willing to give everything. For the views of these people, Roja had long expected. Not long after he came to this world, he knew the difference between comics and reality. Don't look at the world in the comics as so beautiful, it seems that anyone can eat a lot of fish, drink a lot, and have a carnival. In fact, at least half of the people in this world can't do it. No matter how hard the world government is, and how hard Vegapunk researches, the production capacity of this world is only the level of the Middle Ages in the previous life, or even worse. For most ordinary people, the farthest place they have been to in a lifetime may be the town next door. If anyone's children go to other sea areas, they may never see each other again in this life. Even if you want to talk to your child, you have to go to a rich family in the town and borrow a phone bug before you can say a few words. In such a poor situation, there is also the exploitation of nobles and the rampant pirates. It can be said that many people are living in a hot water. And it is precisely because of this that Drago formed the Revolutionary Army, and Akainu wants to eliminate all pirates because of this, and all people are affected by this era. It is easy for an era to create a hero, but if a hero wants to create an era, it is as difficult as reaching the sky. But Roja is different. He comes from the 21st century. With a system, he knows what is missing and what is needed in this era. This is also the confidence that Roja has, the confidence to replace the world government, and he has the ability to change this era. Have the power to make life better for everyone. Only in the case of food and clothing, people will consider entertainment, and his cartoons can truly be circulated in the hands of everyone in the world. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, a new month arrives. Roja sat in his room and first clicked on the option of his attribute panel. At this point his property bar has become Host, Roja, Intermediate Cartoonist. Open black lens bracket sex, male close black lens bracket. Cartoonist level, level 5 21 million 50 million. Fan value, 11.7 million. Inherent skills, flexible hands LV1, keyword lottery LV1, absolute calmness, comic world lottery, fragment enhancement. Possessions, Gilgamesh character card, accelerator character card, 7 days and 7 nights sword. Open black lens bracket the world you are in, one piece close black lens bracket. Looking at the experience of the cartoonist level, Roja's eyes twitched for a while. That's right, he was successfully promoted to the intermediate level cartoonist, and the experience required for the upgrade was also expected to increase. But what the hell, isn't this experience gain a bit too much? This is it. Comparing his middle finger fiercely to the system in his heart, Roja opened the lottery option and chose Gundam 00. Gundam, quickly get me a Gundam to play with. Roja rubbed his hands and started the lottery. This time, for nothing else, he just wanted to get a Gundam to play with. Congratulations to the host, you have obtained the X2 Angel Gundam fragment. Congratulations to the host, get GN Engine Fragments X3. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host, get close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations. Close black lens bracket. 10 minutes later, Roja looked at a dagger and a character card in front of him, his face as black as the bottom of the pot. That's right, this is what he got after consuming 10 million fan points. Frequency dagger and Aelia Schönberger character card. The system of hemp sales batch. You are playing with me. How can it be so dark? Roja rubbed his hair frantically, his face speechless. Aelia Schönberg is the one who developed the core technology of the Gundam engine, GN technology, and created the Heaven and Human organization. In addition, he is also a great man in history who proposed the theory of solar power generation system, a rare scientist and inventor in the 21st century, a top scientist in physics and engineering, and he also advocated the construction of solar orbits, created the theory of using photovoltaic energy, and solved the problem. The energy crisis brought about by the depletion of oil resources in the later century. In fact, Roja is still very happy to draw this character card. With this guy, the research progress of the Institute can definitely be improved a lot, and more scientific research projects can be launched. But as soon as he saw the high-frequency dagger on the side, Roja's face darkened. Chapter 171 Steel Fa. The principle of high-frequency weapons is to make the weapon vibrate thousands of times per second at high frequencies, thereby greatly improving the cutting ability of the weapon. Under such high-frequency vibration, high-frequency weapons can easily cut through anything hard, and it would be an underestimate to say that it can cut iron like mud. This kind of weapon, placed in this world, is definitely a peerless weapon that far exceeds the supreme sword. But who can slash someone with a 5-meter-long dagger? Ah, system, get out of here. Tell me, how do you use a 5-meter-long dagger? That handle is thicker than my waist. Are you chopping? Roaring frantically for a while, Roja lay on the sofa with some heartbreak. That's right, the one placed in front of Roja at this time is indeed the legendary high-frequency dagger, but this dagger is a mecha weapon. It's such a fool. My luck is so dark. Roja shook his head helplessly and put away the things in front of him. It's better than nothing. I'll call Ilia Schoenberg out tomorrow and throw this dagger into the Research Institute to see if we can make a smaller version. After the lottery was drawn, Roja clicked on the option of the comic lottery draw. After thinking for a while, he still entered the science fiction option on the keyword. Gundam 00 can't completely meet his needs, and it's almost enough to draw a few similar books. In fact, I still want Dora a Dream. The familiar light circulated, and 3 cards floated in front of Roja. Ignoring the first 2 comics with little technological content, Roja's eyes were firmly locked on the 3rd comic. Fullmetal Alchemist Fa. Roja's eyes twitched. System, Fullmetal Alchemist can also be considered science fiction. Why do I think he should be in themes such as blood and fantasy? Fullmetal Alchemist involves equivalent exchange and a variety of scientific research, which is a sci-fi genre by default, and will naturally appear in the lottery. Well, what you said is right. Who called you a system? Roja pouted, and reached out to bring the comics closer to his mind. Feeling the steelmaking plot in his mind, Roja couldn't help hooking the corners of his mouth. Alchemy or something is also very interesting. By drawing a magic circle, you can manipulate elements of various attributes, turn iron ingots into weapons, and turn river water into steam. As long as you follow the principle of equivalent exchange, you can do almost anything. If you have a sage's stone, you can change things out of thin air without even following the principle of equivalent exchange. Not bad, not bad. I'll draw this when Gundam is finished. Roja closed the system interface with satisfaction, and began to think about the latest plan in his mind. Kai. Suddenly a girl appeared in Roja's QA. Speaking of which, Shadow, those guys haven't found Misaka Makoto yet. Roja looked at the ceiling and said to himself. What Roja didn't know was that Misaka Makoto had already entered the Great Route and was followed. The first half of the Great Route, the Kingdom of Alabasta. 3 petite figures in black robes were running through the jungle. Then, under the cover of night, they shuttled through the jungle, disappearing and appearing from time to time. Behind them, there were murderous villains holding torches one after another. Although the flames were scattered, they spread throughout the virgin forest, and there were hundreds of people as far as the eye could see. These villains formed a half-moon formation and kept chasing behind the 3 of them. From time to time, they made low-pitched shouts of killing. Once they saw the figures of the 3, they did not hesitate to raise their guns and shoot. Although the 3 of them relied on Misaka Makoto's arrogance and domineering, they avoided the vast majority of their pursuers, but the number of each other was too large, and encounters were inevitable. Whoa whoa, underscore underscore. After rushing through a dense bush, a group of running villains appeared in front of Masaka Makoto and the three. Before the villains could react, Masaka Makoto made the first move. Putting his hands together, he pulled them apart suddenly, and the next moment, a blue grid appeared in Masaka Makoto's hands. Pushing forward sharply, the power grid instantly became larger the moment he let go, shrouding the more than 10 villains in front of him. Flank. Enemy attack. Found them. Be careful. Send the flare. Seeing the three rushing out, the villains panicked, but before they could take effective action, the power grid had already fallen on them. Crackling underscore. A flash of lightning flashed, and everyone fell to the ground, completely dark. Seeing the villains who had been knocked down by her before meeting, Masaka Makoto's eyes showed a dazed look. Even though she has defeated thousands of villains and even killed a lot of people so far, she still feels a little unreal after each battle. Just when Masaka Makoto was stunned, a few pitch-black thorns suddenly shot out from the tree canopy above her head, reaching the top of Masaka Makoto's head. Big sister, Shirai Kuroko exclaimed in surprise. I saw Masaka Makoto's expression instantly became clear. Electric light flashed between her brows, and the next moment, a handful of iron sand suddenly flowed out from her waist, firmly protecting the top of her head. Ding! Underscore. After a sound of golden iron, Masaka Makoto quickly retreated to the side of Kuroko Shirai. Heitsi, go. Okay. Kuroko Shirai quickly grabbed Masaka Makoto and the girl beside her, and with a flick of her figure, she appeared 100 meters away the next moment. After a few teleportation, the three figures completely disappeared into the dark jungle. Cut, let them escape again. After the two left, an enchanting woman with long blue hair jumped down from the canopy, looked at the direction in which the three disappeared, pouted, reached out and took out a phone bug from her chest. Mr. 1, they went to your side. According to the plan, continue to drive them away. Understood. A deep male voice came from the phone worm. Looking at the direction where Masaka Makoto and the others disappeared, Miss. The thorn fruit-capable person, stroked her lips with her fingers, and a strange smile appeared on her face. Little darlings, I see how long you can escape. For you, Arbor Oak Studio has been dispatched, and even the original arrangement has been cancelled. Even Mr. Zero, who has never been seen before, has come here. You will never run away. No matter how strong you are, you will never be the opponent of that lord. Recalling the shock of Mr. Zero appearing in front of them a few days ago, Miss S face with both fingers couldn't help showing a flush. That lord is really as strong as the rumors say. Chapter 172 Nico Robin. At night, after getting rid of the last group of pursuers, Masaka Makoto and the three finally passed through this huge virgin forest. Sister, they're not chasing anymore, where are we going next? Shirai Kuroko glanced at the virgin forest behind him in shock, with an expression of the rest of his life on his face. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no response from Masaka Makoto. Shirai Kuroko turned his head in confusion, only to see Masaka Makoto's expression indifferent, gloomy and submerged in the water, without saying a word. Go left, Masaka Makoto said suddenly, and immediately shifted to the left. The two Shirai Kuroko behind them, although they had doubts in their hearts, followed up honestly. Along the way, it was only by relying on Masaka Makoto's arrogance that they were able to get rid of so many chasing soldiers. This situation has long been commonplace. Just that Heitsi frowned slightly. The chasing soldiers are behind. What is the elder sister hiding? Is there any enemy? However, before the three of them could run far, Masaka Makoto turned again. In the next few minutes, the three of them turned several times in a row, and finally stopped directly. This time, even Kuroko Shirai was stunned. Sister, what's the matter? Shirai Kuroko asked with some doubts. I can't leave, he has locked me, Masaka Makoto said with a solemn expression. At the same time, Countless iron sand was drawn from every corner of her clothes, spread on the ground, and kept swimming. Who is it, crocodile? The voices of Kuroko Beijing and the girl next to her rang out at the same time. When she heard the girl's words, Masaka Makoto nodded, but Kuroko Shirai shrank her pupils and showed a look of horror on her face. He's here again, Shirai Kuroko exclaimed. The first time I heard this name was a week ago. The crocodile suddenly appeared in front of them, and without any nonsense, he fought directly with Masaka Makoto. Although Kuroko Shirai slipped away with the two before the final decision was made, Crocodile's strength still left an indelible impression on the three of them. Infinite yellow sand, powerful physical skills, and astonishing fighting wisdom were all displayed on Crocodile's body. Afterwards, Masaka Makoto admitted that if she really fought the opponent to the death, even if she could win, she would definitely be seriously injured. It is precisely because of this that they did not dare to stop in the face of the pursuit of the Baroque studio. Even if Masaka Makoto can let Kuroko Shirai hide in two places, and then wipe out all the people in the Baroque studio. But they also know that if they dare to stop, Crocodile, who has been following, will definitely arrive. At that time, they will face the entire Baroque studio and the 7 Wuhai, Crocodile. Rustling _ The wind whistled, the yellow sand spread, and a salon roll with the yellow sand all over the sky suddenly swept in from a distance. In just a few seconds, Sharon Roll had already arrived on a hill 20 meters away from the three of them. Call _ The tornado dissipated, and a man with a big back and a long scar on his face appeared in front of the three in a black fur coat. Chichibukai, Crocodile. Little girls, finally stop running. Crocodile drank a cigar and looked at Masaka Makoto and the three of them proudly, as if looking at three mice caught by a cat. Kuroko, you two go first, I'll be there in a while. Masaka Makoto ordered without looking back. But elder sister. As soon as Shirai Kuroko heard that Masaka Makoto was going to stay alone, she became anxious. Go, Masaka Makoto yelled. However, at this moment, behind them, more than a dozen black shadows suddenly appeared in a circle, standing around the three of them. Let's go, little sister, where do you want to go? Miss Valentine's Day held a parasol and looked at the three of them with a sneer. Surrender obediently, there is still hope for you to survive. Mr. One, who was able to cut the fruit quickly, persuaded in a low tone, but the outside of his arms suddenly turned into two sharp blades. How can they surrender? I must kill that stinky bitch myself. Mr. 5, the fruit-exploding power user, roared with a ferocious expression, and pressed his palm to his chest subconsciously. Masaka Makoto's scar. Ellipsis. 9 flowers. Makoto, let's go, they want me. The girl beside her suddenly took 2 steps forward, blocking Masaka Makoto. He lifted the hood, revealing a long dark hair, and a strong and charming face with an intellectual. Nico Robin. Crocodile, what you want is me, let them both go. Robin looked at Crocodile indifferently, even though she knew she was facing the legendary Chihuahua, there was still no trace on her face. A look of fear. Nicole Robin, are you finally willing to stand up? Crocodile twitched the corner of his mouth and smiled contemptuously. When he saw the disapproval look on Crocodile's face, Robin suddenly took out a dagger and put it on his neck. If you don't let them go, I'll die here. See if you can find another person who can read the text of history. You. Crocodile stared, and a trace of anger appeared on his face. Robin, what are you doing? We can't leave you. Masaka Makoto saw Robin took out the dagger, and hurried forward, trying to grab the dagger. However, Robin took 2 steps forward, avoiding Masaka Makoto's hand, and turned to face them. Makoto, Kuroko, it's really fun to be together during this time, but you should go, they just want my knowledge and can't hurt me. Roha stared deeply at Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko, eyebrows there is a trace of bleakness in it. But, Masaka Makoto's tears came down, choked and not knowing what to say. Crocodile on the hillside looked at the three with a little impatience on his face. Hey, have you finished speaking? Finished. Boom. Suddenly, a huge sword chi suddenly slashed from the side, and wherever it passed, it was unstoppable. This sword energy was too fast and too sudden, and everyone who had been joking around the Baroque studio of Masaka Makoto and the three of them suddenly panicked. With his back facing this sword energy, Mr. 4 was cut in half by this sword. Chapter 173 100,000 Hurry. Mr. 4. Evil, where is the enemy? Everyone be careful, there may be more than one person on the other side. The people in the Baroque studio hurriedly gathered around Crocodile. Several looked at the direction where the sword energy was coming, while the others glanced around and looked alert. There's someone there. Suddenly someone pointed into the distance. Under the eyes of the public, a burly, muscular man with a steel-like luster slowly walked from a distance. On the shoulders of the strong man, there was a giant sword of cold glow that was 2 meters long and 2 palms wide. Before he could get close, the domineering sword intent spread out and pierced everyone's heart. Great swordsman. Crocodile's expression suddenly turned gloomy. When the members of the Baroque studio on the side heard this title, they even made bursts of exclamations that could not be suppressed. Great swordsman. That is a title that can only be obtained by defeating countless swordsmen. If it was placed in the past, the people from the Baroque studio would probably have run away. But even with Crocodile's backing behind him, everyone in the Baroque studio was still a little stunned, and they no longer dared to look directly at the strong man walking in the distance, for fear that the other party would be dissatisfied, so they would stare at themselves for a while. Fuck, coward. Glancing at everyone in the Baroque studio contemptuously, the strong man scolded in a low voice, and continued to walk forward swaggeringly. Although the strong man used what he thought was a low voice, his heroic voice was still heard by everyone in the Baroque studio, and bursts of anger rose in everyone's hearts. Crocodile, who was in the center of the crowd, ignored the restless subordinates beside him, but stared at the strong man who suddenly appeared with a thoughtful look on his face. Although the average great swordsman is not an invincible object for him, you must know that Masaka Makoto is by the side. Finally, the strong man walked to Masaka Makoto's side, looked at the 3 petite little girls, and turned to look at everyone in the Baroque studio sarcastically. You bastards, a bunch of people bullying 3 little girls, it's interesting. Do you want me to play with you? Lao Tzu's sword is thick and big. Laughed out loud. Who are you? Masaka Makoto looked at the sudden helper with some doubts, and was a little dazed for a while. Cough cough, I almost forgot my business. It was only then that the strong man remembered that the 2 little girls around him had unusual identities, and they were not the targets for him to play dirty jokes. He quickly stopped smiling and bowed deeply to Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. Tianbu, Tiancho, was ordered by the leader to come to support the 2 young ladies. Please leave first, the leader has received the news and will be there in a while. Although this action was performed by a beast-like strongman, Masaka Makoto still covered her mouth, her eyes sparkling. Needless to say, she also knew who the leader was. Roha. The Great Root, the capital of 7 waters. Roha, who was sleeping with Monet in his arms, was awakened by a hurried knock on the door downstairs. Well, who is it? Monet snorted, twisted in Roha's arms, stretched out his white arm, blocked Roha's waist, and buried his head on Roha's chest. I don't know, you go to bed first, I'll go take a look. Roha frowned, gently broke free from Monet's arms, tucked the quilt for her, then tightened her pajamas and walked away impatiently go downstairs. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Who is so idle to knock on the door? After coming down to open the door and seeing the man in black at the door, Roha frowned suddenly, knowing that something was wrong. With the practice of shadow except for really urgent matters, I would never dare to disturb him at this time. What happened? Roha asked in a deep voice. 3 days ago, Xuanbu found out that the Baroque studio had dispatched a large number of people to the eastern part of the kingdom of Alabasta, suspected of chasing and killing someone, and the special personnel sneaked in and followed. Half an hour ago, among those being pursued, we found the figures of Makoto Masaka and Miss Kuroko Shirai, and I notified the nearby Tenbu members to rush to them. 15 minutes ago, Tianbu Tiancho sent a message and confirmed the location of the two young ladies, but at the battle site, Tiancho also discovered Chihuahai crocodile. It has been decided to fight. Hope to get reinforcements. Ugly. Roha frowned, and 5.0 instantly recalled the other party's information in his mind. That was after the Marjoya incident, the swordsman who came to challenge. The swordsmanship was open and close, more than tough, but not flexible enough. Roha, who was greatly increased by the swordsmanship at the beginning, cleaned up and threw it into the shadow among. Now, it should be on the edge of the swordsman and the great swordsman. Facing crocodile, this inflexible idiot is definitely a dead end. Where are they now? Roha asked quickly. After confirming the location mentioned by the intelligence officer, Roha's figure flashed and disappeared in place. Chapter 174 Crocodile of Comics. In the deserts of Alabasta, the fighting continues. The sky is full of yellow sand flying endlessly, and under the shadow of the night, it is like a dark devil, constantly swallowing everything around it. In the dancing yellow sand, corpses fell to the ground, blood stained the sand beneath them. It was the corpse of a member of the Outer Baroque studio who arrived in the middle and accidentally got involved in the battle. Most of them were members of the Baroque studio who were killed by Tiancho, and a small number of them, in addition to dying in the aftermath of the battle, were brutally killed by him because they blocked the way of crocodile. At this time, the main cadres of the Baroque studio had already withdrawn from the center of the battlefield, wandering far away on the edge of the battlefield, guarding against Masaka Makoto and others escaping. Desert sword. Crocodile roared. His right arm suddenly turned into yellow sand, turning into a huge sand blade and slashing at Masaka Makoto. Masaka Makoto hurriedly rolled to the side, and while defending with iron sand, the coin that had been held in her palm shot out. The next moment, a dazzling beam of light ripped apart the sea of sand and shot directly at Crocodile. Little girl with no memory. Crocodile grinned, letting the railgun cut a big hole in his chest. The golden hook in his right hand quickly lifted, blocking Tien Chao's heavy blow. Above the arm, the yellow sand spreads, and it is about to wrap around the sword body towards Tien Chao's arm. Seeing this, Tien Chao didn't dare to neglect, he quickly retracted his sword and flew back, retreating to Masaka Makoto's side. What's wrong? What's with your arrogance at the beginning? That's not enough. Crocodile grinned and looked at the panting two men, his face full of arrogance. Glancing at Crocodile, Tien Chao did not speak, but quietly asked Masaka Makoto beside him. Miss Makoto, do you have any water? Ah, water. Masaka Makoto was taken aback. Why do you want water at this time, tired and thirsty? Yes, any water will do, the more the better. As long as there is one that weakens that guy's combat effectiveness, your railgun can hurt him. Tien Chao explained quickly. As early as the beginning of the Shadow's establishment, Roha told the cadres inside the Shadow of all the weaknesses of the strong that he knew, including Crocodile's weaknesses. And Tien Chao, because of his usual recklessness, hurried over when he heard that the mission target was here, and forgot to bring water, which led to this embarrassing situation. Armed and domineering, when he was in close combat with Crocodile, he was tied down in the face of Crocodile's 360-degree yellow sand attack. As for Masaka Makoto, who was attacking from a distance, because of the elementalization of the opponent, she couldn't cause effective damage at all, and she was embarrassed to death. After listening to Tien Chao's explanation, Masaka Makoto shook her head a little embarrassedly. We have finished drinking our water. Tien Chao, really unreliable. At this moment, Masaka Makoto suddenly turned pale and hurriedly pushed Tien Chao away. Get out of the way. The next moment, a giant sand blade suddenly stabbed out of the ground. The attack that was supposed to be sneak attack was accidentally missed because of Masaka Makoto's powerful sense of domineering. Is it domineering? A look of disgust appeared on Crocodile's face. Before, he had doubts about the little girl's evasion ability like a prophet. It has also been cultivated to a very advanced level, and it can evade many attacks. But, so what? Crocodile sneered. Come and try this trick. Desert Sword. Crocodile suddenly called out the name of the move loudly, and the two of them subconsciously dodged to their side. However, the expected slash did not arrive. Instead, a horizontal tornado composed of yellow sand shot towards the rear of Masaka Makoto. This is Shalon. Cheated. Masaka Makoto turned around in a hurry, and saw two petite figures standing there in the direction of Shalon's impact. Shirai Kuroko. Nico Robin. Go Kuroko. Masaka Makoto yelled hastily. Shirai Kuroko was instantly frightened, and hurriedly teleported out with Robin. However, she had just appeared, and her pupils could not help shrinking. Crocodile actually appeared in front of her, and a golden hook smashed down. Boom! With a loud bang, the three figures flew backwards. Shirai Kuroko and Robin were unhurt, while the third figure was firmly guarding them. At the critical moment, Tien-Cho arrived. Little girl, don't use your space ability to jump around, you can't run away in this desert. Crocodile sneered. After speaking, he turned his head to look at Tien-Cho with a determined face. How about my new trick? Crocodile's face was full of grins, and beside him, there were madly spinning yellow sands like grinding discs and chainsaws. A trick born out of Masaka Makoto's iron sand sword. The sands of Crocodile. Similar to the sword of iron sand. Masaka Makoto's face was a little unsightly. No one knows the power of the iron sand sword better than her. Even if Crocodile's yellow sand, the damage has dropped several grades compared to her iron sand. But just the extremely fast rotating yellow sand is enough to instantly wear off a layer of flesh and blood, not to mention Crocodile, who can use the yellow sand at any time to extract the water from the opponent's body. Can you still do it? Masaka Makoto quietly moved to Tien-Cho's side with a worried expression on her face. How can a man say no? Tien-Cho laughed heroically, pulled off the sleeve of his shirt, and casually wrapped it around his bloody right arm. 217 At this time, Tien-Cho is full of wounds of different depths, and blood is flowing, and he has long been dyed into a bloody man. Although such injuries are nothing to the battle-scarred Tien-Cho, but Crocodile's shameless attack made him feel heavier and heavier. Crocodile has no bottom line. From the very beginning of the battle, he targeted Shirai Kuroko and Robin, who were the weakest in combat, in order to contain Masaka Makoto and Tien-Cho. Under such circumstances, Tien-Cho, who was the fastest and most responsive, would naturally have to frequently protect the two of Shirai Kuroko and resist Crocodile's attack, and his injuries would naturally become heavier and heavier. Are you going to die here today? Tien-Cho smiled bitterly. He couldn't last long. It's a pity that I haven't reached the third realm yet. Tien-Cho sighed, but his eyes became firm again. Kendo is not like this all the way. Either the kendo is unrivaled, or you die in the challenges one after another. To be able to die in battle, instead of dying with regret when he is old, he is already very satisfied. Miss Makoto, I'll sprinkle water on him in a while, you find the right time to attack him. Tien-Cho suddenly moved 2 steps and said to Masaka Makoto in a low voice. Water. Where did the water come from? Before Masaka Makoto could ask her doubts, Tien-Cho, who was beside her, banged and rushed out. Chapter 175 Suicide Attack. Isn't there such a thing as water all over the body? Tien-Cho laughed arrogantly, accelerated again, and poked Rockdale. Crocodile, uncle, I will send you back to the west today. Almost in an instant, Tien-Cho had already rushed in front of Crocodile, wielding his sword and slashing. The guy who only takes advantage of his words. The contempt in Crocodile's eyes flashed away, and at his feet, the yellow sand suddenly rose, and an arc-shaped giant egg wrapped him firmly. At the same time, countless spikes suddenly appeared on the surface of the dome. On the surface of the thorns, countless yellow sand rubbed and turned, making a rustling sound like an ant colony marching. Just hearing this sound made one's scalp tingle. This is a real grinder of flesh and blood. Roha's comics are not only addicting and shocking, but also open up a new way of fighting for the strong in this world. Crocodile is one of them. Die. In the face of the terrifying yellow sand, Tianqiu did not dodge or evade, and with an indomitable will to die on his face, he slashed head-on. This blow is comparable to a real great swordsman. Boom. The fierce sword energy was cut out of thin air, facing the overwhelming yellow sand. Tianqiu's fatal blow not only shattered Crocodile's yellow sand defense, but also slashed towards Crocodile's head with the momentum of severing everything. On the sword body, the dark armed color is domineering and exudes a metallic luster. As long as you go further, you can split Crocodile in half. Just go further. It's still almost. Tianqiu looked at the sand gun that passed through his abdomen and limbs, his face pale as paper. Reckless man. Crocodile snorted coldly, took 2 steps back with some heart palpitations, and then activated his ability to completely suck Tianqiu into a mummified corpse. However, at this moment, a strange flush suddenly appeared on Tianqiu's face. Silly beep. I'm about to kill you. Tianqiu spit saliva on Crocodile's face, and then his hands suddenly inserted into the wound on his chest. Tianqiu bit his teeth, and ripped it to both sides. It's now. Tianqiu roared mournfully. A large amount of blood spurted out from Tianqiu's chest like a fountain, and instantly splashed on Crocodile in front of him. What's wrong with you? Crocodile hurriedly touched the blood on his face, and the panic in his heart was beyond words. However, at this moment, a crisp sound of gold and iron sounded. Crocodile's heart tightened and he turned his head hastily. When he saw the orange beam of light shot towards him, his pupils shrunk suddenly into a small dot. No. Boom. A small mushroom cloud appeared above the sand sea, and then shrank inward. The next moment, the sound of the earth-shattering explosion sounded like a substantial shock wave, blowing up a large amount of yellow sand, sweeping in all directions. During the explosion, Kuroko Shirai rushed up to the wind, grabbed the seriously injured and dying Tianqiu, and brought him to Masaka Makoto's side. The wall of iron sand unfolded instantly, wrapping the 4 of them in the middle. After a full tens of seconds, the violent shock wave gradually dissipated, and the result of Masaka Makoto's blow with all her strength was gradually revealed in front of everyone. At this time, in the center of the explosion, a deep pit with a depth of about 3 or 4 meters and a radius of more than 10 meters appeared. Have you solved it? Masaka Makoto looked at the center of the deep pit with some prostration, sighed in relief, and collapsed to the ground. But soon, she stood up and hurriedly ran behind her. When she saw Tianqiu's gradually graying face and body full of scars, she couldn't help but stay in place, at a loss. From the very beginning of the battle, Tianqiu had assumed the role of a meat shield and attracted firepower, and was injured countless times by Crocodile. If it wasn't for the protection of his armed arrogance, it is estimated that he would have died at that time. But now, after Crocodile had opened several large holes in his abdomen and took the initiative to tear open the flesh on his chest, he had no more than a few minutes to live. At this time, the extremely powerful physique could only prolong his life for a few minutes. At this moment, the cadres of the Baroque studio who had been wandering around suddenly gathered around the deep pit. Looking at the pothole without any movement, the cadres of the Baroque studio felt like the sky was falling. Sir, is dead. Miss Valentine sat on the ground, looking straight at the pit, her face darkened. Impossible. Lord Crocodile, it is absolutely impossible to die so easily. He is a natural ability person, how could he be killed by such a thing? Mr. One shouted. But, you also saw it. That guy just now spilled blood on Lord Crocodile. Even so, Lord Crocodile cannot possibly die. The cadres of the Baroque studio, because of the disappearance of Crocodile, actually launched an infighting and began to quarrel with each other. But even if they were saddened by the defeat of Crocodile, none of them planned to come and kill Masaka Makoto and others to avenge Crocodile. The strength gap is really too big. Before they were able to run after Masaka Makoto, it was entirely because Crocodile was nearby. As long as they held it for a while, Crocodile could come. Now, even if they were separated by dozens of meters from Masaka Makoto and the others, the cadres of the Baroque studio did not feel the slightest sense of security. Ha, ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Suddenly, in the center of the deep pit, there was a burst of insolent laughter. When everyone present heard this burst of laughter, their expressions were different. Lord Crocodile. Lord Crocodile is alive. I just said, Lord Crocodile is absolutely impossible to die. It's the little girl who wants to die first. The people in the Baroque studio swept away the shadows before, and ecstatic smiles bloomed on their faces. How is that possible? Masaka Makoto's eyes widened, her face full of disbelief. When she saw Crocodile, who had lost all of his arms, walking out of the dust, a trace of fear appeared in her pupils. Impossible. How could you not die? I know. Masaka Makoto was incoherent. You obviously hit me, didn't you? Crocodile looked hideous, but his eyes were as cold as an abyss. Chapter 176. Don't move. Speaking of which, I should still thank you. Crocodile grinned and walked towards Masaka Makoto while tearing at his clothes with his only remaining hand and bandaging the wound on his broken arm. If you chose to attack behind that bastard, instead of running to your side and avoiding that bastard, I might really be dead. Crocodile roared and stared at Masaka Makoto. After he finished speaking, he helped his forehead with one hand and sneered, "Thanks to your childish kindness, you saved me and killed yourself." Chahai's funeral. Crocodile roared, and countless yellow sand rose up in response, instantly turning into dozens of huge sand pillars, rubbing and turning, and swept away in the direction of Masaka Makoto. Looking at the overwhelming yellow sand, Masaka Makoto had a look of despair in her eyes. Behind him, Kuroko Shirai struggled to get up, but before he could stand firm, he knelt down again. The continuous fierce battle, coupled with the rescue of Tien Cho from the center of the explosion, had already left her bruised all over. The shadow of death shrouded the hearts of everyone. Scoff. Chi chi chi. Sudden, 437 sounded a burst of air braking. At first, it was just one, but after a second, the dense air braking sound followed, as if the army was shooting, 10,000 arrows were fired, and it seemed like a monstrous hurricane was passing by. Rip air. I saw a dazzling white light blooming in the sky in the distance. The next moment, endless sword chi flew from a distance, staggered and cut in the air, and finally countless sword chi merged together, like a white dragon, head-on collided with the yellow sand in the sky. Boom boom boom. Intensive explosions sounded, and in front of this endless sword energy, dozens of pillars of yellow sand were smashed to pieces in an instant. The white giant dragon, with an unrivaled posture, smashed the yellow sand and twisted towards Crocodile in a tyrannical and domineering posture. Crocodile didn't snort, and his body was smashed in an instant. Above the distant sky, a domineering and stern voice resounded through the entire sky when the sword energy dragon dissipated. Today's matter, all those involved must die. When this voice resounded like the wrath of the gods, a wave of unparalleled domineering, as if standing at the top of all beings, swept across all directions like lightning. Feeling this breath of endless majesty and domineering, looking at his companion who was cut down by a scythe, there was a thick horror on Mr. 1 Feet's face, and he couldn't help screaming out. Voice. This level of domineering. How is that possible? At the same time as he shouted, Mr. 1 couldn't stand the domineering tyranny any longer, and fell to his knees with a plop. In the gaze of horror and fear, Roha's figure suddenly disappeared into the sky in the distance, and when he reappeared, he was already in the center of the battlefield. Roha. Roha. This is the voice of Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko in surprise. Agent, Roha. This was Robin's shocking voice. In addition, there were a few scattered voices that sounded from among the executives of the Baroque studio, but unlike Masaka Makoto and the others, the Baroque studio was full of shock and fear. How is that possible? It's actually Roha, the representative of the Dimension Brigade. How could he appear here? Miss Valentine looked at the figure that appeared out of nowhere, and a shrill roar echoed in the ears of your companions. It's really that Roha. You read that right. It's impossible, how could he be here? Miss covered her head with her fingers crumbling, her face filled with hopeless gloom. Damn, didn't it mean that Masaka Makoto wasn't from the Dimension Brigade? Didn't it mean that she was attacked many times, and no one from the Dimension Brigade came forward? What the hell is going on? Mr. Point 1 Feet's eyes were red, spiritually on the verge of collapse. In fact, the Baroque studio had already discovered the traces of the three of Masaka Makoto. The reason why they did not start chasing until recently was because they spent a full month investigating the relationship between Masaka Makoto and the Dimension Brigade. During this period, they even spent countless money and manpower to hire some pirates to attack the three of Masaka Makoto, wanting to see if the Dimension Brigade would come out. Until the end, they did not dare to attack after they did not see any statement from the Dimensional Brigade, and they had the idea of one-hit kill and disappeared afterwards. But no one expected that a celestial idiot would be killed halfway, messing things up, abolishing one of Crocodile's arms, and now, the legendary Roha, actually appeared in person. An indescribable color of despair shrouded the hearts of the members of the Baroque studio, making them unable to breathe. The opponent is too strong, and the strong makes them despair. Even if they are a famous Baroque studio, even if their leader is Shichibukai personally appointed by the world government. But in front of that legendary Dimensional Brigade, they were nothing. In front of the Dimensional Brigade that even the beast pirates can easily kill, they may just be a bigger ant, an ant that will disappear as long as you stretch out a finger and press it lightly. Dimensional Brigade. Crocodile, who was smashed by sword energy, finally condensed and formed, looking at Roha with a gloomy face. Stay here and don't move, otherwise, you will be the first to die. Roha glanced at Crocodile coldly, and then walked towards Tiancho like no one else. Behind him, watching Roha's back to him, the unsuspecting back, Crocodile's face was uncertain, and finally he didn't dare to move. The strength that Roha just showed is definitely the level of the top swordsman, and he has no resistance at all. Instead of attacking Roha, think about how to escape. Swa. Roha's figure flashed, and when he reappeared, he had already appeared beside Tiancho who was about to die. Looking at the ugly blood and scars all over the sky, Roha calmed down instead. It would be good if he didn't die. The leader. Is it the leader? I have completed the task, can you please take care of my pregnant wife in the future? If it is a son. The dying Tiancho turned his head with difficulty, followed his breath, and looked at Roha direction. Chapter 177 Blackening, Tyranny. At this time, a strange light appeared on Tiancho's face, like a reflection, but his eyes were already dark, and he could see everything. Shut up, take a good rest, since I'm here, you'll be fine. Roha also knew that the situation was urgent, and quickly consumed a piece of Arturia's noble phantasm, a fragment of distant utopia. Start treatment for Tiancho. A minute later, he gently put Tiancho back on the ground, and looking at the other party's gentle breathing, Roha couldn't help hooking the corner of his mouth. Turning his head to look at the three people around him, Roha started to treat them again after his eyes stopped for a moment on Nico Robin. The least injured is Nicole Robin, who has been protected by everyone, and Crocodile couldn't bear to hurt her, with only a few scratches on her body. The injuries of Masaka Makoto and Beijing Kuroko became more serious, especially Shirai Kuroko, whose delicate and fair cheeks had turned pale at this time. The rich blood mixed with the yellow sand dyed her clothes black. Look. At this scene, Roha's face was a bit gloomy again. After consuming the energy fragments again, after the treatment, Roha took out 3 long gowns to cover the 3 of them, then took out a few bottles of medicine and handed them to Masaka Makoto. Seeing this, Masaka Makoto took it and whispered, "It's all Crocodile," but the other guys also helped. Understood. Roha looked at Masaka Makoto, rubbed her hair lightly, and smiled faintly. However, in that smile, there are countless tyranny and coldness. Be careful, Crocodile has learned my iron sand sword, and it will be very disadvantageous in melee combat. When Roha turned around, Masaka Makoto hurriedly reminded behind her. From the first meeting to the present, she has never seen Roha really take action, and naturally she does not know Roha's strength, for fear that Roha will be injured because he underestimates the enemy. Have a good rest, since I'm here, you don't have to worry about it. Roha smiled lightly, stretched out his hand and waved, signaling Masaka Makoto not to worry. Roha walked towards the center of the battlefield step by step. When he came within 10 meters of Crocodile's expression tightened, and the yellow sand under his feet suddenly began to move. I said, be honest. Rojason gave Crocodile a cold look. The footsteps didn't stop. I walked past Crocodile just like that. What are you going to do? Crocodile turned back with some doubts. Looking in the direction Roha was walking, the hole suddenly shrank. The place where Roha went is exactly where the cadres of the Baroque studio gathered. He's here. He's here. What to do? What should we do? Miss Valentine exclaimed in panic. Why doesn't Lord Crocodile do it? It's such a good opportunity. Because Crocodile can't beat him either. Let's run. Maybe there is still hope for survival. In the panic, the cadres of the Baroque studio even abandoned their respect for Crocodile, and instead felt resentment because of his inaction. Quiet. Mister. One suddenly shouted, gave Roha a frightened look at Roha, who was walking slowly here, turned his head, and looked at his companions. Everyone runs separately. If he catches up, we must hold him back. We won't survive anyway. If we can delay it for a while, we can delay it for a while. Then we might be able to. Scoff. Ellipsis 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 ellipsis. 9 flowers. Suddenly, a white light appeared from Mr. Point 1 Feet's eyebrows and spread down along his eyebrows. Mr. Point 1, who was still encouraging his companions just now, suddenly split in half from the middle. The whole person was split from the middle by Roha. Looking at the blood under his feet in disgust, Roha looked at the horrified Baroque studio cadres, and smiled coldly. As I said, you're all going to die. The bloody slaughter begins. In the face of Roha at this time, the cadres of the Baroque studio had no resistance at all, and were cut to the ground by Roha's sword one by one. After knocking them down, Roha didn't immediately end their lives, but cut off their tendons, cut off their tongues, and let the cadres of the Baroque studio scream miserably on the ground. Looking at the people who fell to the ground, constantly cursing him, begging him, and even begging him to understand himself, a bloody smile appeared on Roha's face. I've changed my mind. Die, it's too easy for you guys. It just so happens that I still have a laboratory, and there is a lack of experimental materials like yours. My guinea pigs, I hope you can be there and live a life without food and clothing. After finishing speaking, Roha grinned and used the domineering arrogance again. This time, the cadres whose willpower was severely weakened could no longer resist his domineering, and all fainted. Walking back slowly, when Roha saw that Crocodile had disappeared into the sand pit, instead of being surprised, he smiled coldly, looked at the whistling sandstorm in the distance, and licked his lips. Run, run as much as you like, let me enjoy it once, the feeling of killing prey. Chapter 178 One Way. Eastern Alabasta. In the endless sand sea, a desert wind continued to sweep across the ground with bursts of shrieks. In the center of the storm, Crocodile ran desperately with the power of the sandstorm, and every time his toes touched the ground, he could sprint more than 10 meters away, at an astonishing speed. Damn, that little girl is actually a member of the Dimensional Brigade. This is really troublesome, Crocodile murmured to himself in a low voice, his face gloomy, and he kept thinking about countermeasures in his mind. The Baroque studio is definitely over, the cadres are all wiped out, the remaining trash fish are useless, and whether they can survive today is a question. Without the cadres of the Baroque studio, his previous series of plans in the Kingdom of Alabasta could not proceed. It can be said that Crocodile's stinky chess hand, all of a sudden put himself back to the liberation, nothing. And most importantly, he also got into trouble with the Dimension Brigade. Recalling the monster-like group and the power Roja showed just now, Crocodile still has some heart palpitations. I can't stay here anymore. I have to leave Alabasta and go to the New World. Only there can I get rid of the pursuit of the Dimensional Brigade. And I have the name of Chihuahai, so I can easily pull up another wave. Team. Crocodile made a decision in his heart, but when he remembered that he was going to the New World empty-handed, he felt like he wanted to cry. For more than 10 years, the team he has accumulated for more than 10 years has disappeared, and whoever he recruits will provoke whoever. At this moment, Crocodile frowned and looked into the distance. On a hill in front of him, there was actually a person sitting. When he saw the appearance of the other party, his heart suddenly tightened, and with a wave of his hands, countless sand swords sprang up from the ground, piercing the hills with a bang that pierced the air. At the same time, Crocodile kept walking, turned his head and ran in the other direction. The response is quite fast. Roja hooked the corner of his mouth coldly, cut off the sand sword, and looked at the direction of Crocodile's departure. Almost killed Tiancho, and seriously injured Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko. If Roja hadn't arrived in time, he might have seen 3 corpses. Thinking of that scene, Roja's face turned cold again. Just killing Crocodile was too cheap for him. The figure flashed, and Roja disappeared in place again. It's actually Roja. What the hell is going on? How could he be so fast, and I didn't feel anything? Could he really move instantly? Crocodile looked hideous and ran desperately. However, at this time, Roja appeared on top of his head again. This time, Roja didn't talk nonsense, and cut out with all his strength. Scoff. The huge half-moon sword chi, with the momentum of severing all things, descended from the sky. In front of this sword energy are Crocodile's horrified eyes. With Roja's current physical fitness, Kendo cultivation, and the blessing of the liberation of the stigmata, the power of this sword is more than twice as powerful as when he was in Mary Joa. Boom. Someone once described that a strong swordsman can break a waterfall with one sword, and the remaining sword energy can make the water flow stagnant. And Roja's sword today is a sword that breaks the sandstorm. The monstrous sandstorm, as if hitting an invisible wall head-on, rolled back in an instant, and the chaotic airflow rose out of thin air, and finally dissipated into the invisible. After the sword chi split out, Roja seemed to feel something, raised his eyebrows, and appeared on a sand dune dozens of meters away the next moment. Armament-colored Domineering instantly blessed the sword, lifted the pitch-black long sword, and Roja went straight to the ground. Puff! The sound of a sharp blade piercing the flesh came from the ground, and the next moment, a roar came, and countless spikes suddenly rose under Roja's feet, trying to pierce the soles of his feet. Roja snorted coldly, his feet staggered, and his domineering feet with armed color stepped on the spikes abruptly. At the same time, a figure sprang out from the ground 10 meters away from Roja, clutching his bleeding right shoulder, the corners of his eyes twitching. You really want to kill them all? Crocodile looked at Roja with a gloomy expression and roared in a low voice. Hey! Roja sneered, his tone full of sarcasm. Dignified Shichibukai, when did you become so naive? From the moment you started chasing Masaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko, you were already dead. Quote. Although he had expected it in his heart, when he heard Roja say this, Crocodile's face suddenly darkened, and a moment later, a crazy look appeared on his face. Since there is no way to escape from the pursuit, then the only way is to fight to the death. Crocodile's dignity does not allow him to bow down. Come on, even if you die, I will pull you with me. Crocodile roared frantically, fully activating the ability of the Sha-Sha fruit, and on the exposed skin, all the veins appeared, terrifying. At the foot of Crocodile, the yellow sand within a radius of 100 meters suddenly fluctuated, and the overwhelming quicksand slowly rose, rushing towards Roja like a tsunami. It's too much. Roja sneered, killing intent in his eyes. He swung the knife, and the blood on the knife suddenly splashed on the ground. The next moment, Roja disappeared in place again. 10 minutes later, Roja returned to Masaka Makoto's side with the blood-stained crocodile all over his body. This is, Crocodile. You really killed him. Looking at Crocodile, who was thrown to the ground by Roja like a garbage, Robin's face was full of horror. She didn't even feel it herself, and in the eyes she looked at Roja, she did not know when the color of worship appeared. It's not dead yet. Roja noticed the strangeness in Robin's eyes, raised his eyebrows, and when he was 5.5 conscious, he would suppress the magic of Black Mole of Love. But as soon as it was suppressed, Roja was stunned for a moment. Something is wrong. The Black Mole of Love has no ability to activate at all, so why is Robin's eyes so strange? What about her? Roja shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He's not a stallion. Seeing one loves the other, just let it go. At this time, Tianqiu had woken up, and leaned on the stone next to him to rest a little weakly. After confirming that Tianqiu was not injured and everything was normal, Roja was slightly relieved. At this moment, there was a sound of breaking air in the distance, and a few seconds later, a boy with white hair and red eyes landed beside Roja. When Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko saw each other's appearance, they exclaimed in unison. Accelerator. Chapter 179. Do you want to come to my house? Hearing the exclamations of Misaka Makoto and the two, Accelerator frowned, ignored him, and walked towards Asia. Standing at the top of Academy City with him, he certainly knew Misaka Makoto, who was ranked 3rd in LV5, but Accelerator and Misaka Makoto had not met at this time, so he naturally ignored each other's plans. As for Kuroko Shirai, which trash fish is that? It's over. Roja looked at Accelerator with a light smile. Of course, you don't look at who I am. Accelerator smiled bloody, but after a change of style, he said to Roja, by the way, can you give others the task of cleaning up trash next time? Really, it's so boring. I want to play with something better. Okay, next time I will give you the best. Roja replied casually. As early as a month ago, Roja summoned Accelerator to cooperate with Tianjin Yashang's research. As for Accelerator, Roja has no surprises. At the beginning of the 08 call, Roja learned that when this Accelerator was summoned, the absolute ability plan had not yet begun, and the plot had not yet begun. At this time, Accelerator naturally did not experience the defeat against Kamiju Tuma, nor did he encounter the last work. I have never experienced that Accelerator, who can be called turning points in his life, still maintains his bold and cruel character, far from the tenderness after contact with the last work. But that's fine, many things can be safely left to Accelerator to do. Shaking his head, shaking off the chaotic thoughts in his mind, Roja patted the dust on his body, looked at the people looking at him, and smiled. It's over here too, let's go home. Go home. Misaka Makoto blinked, not knowing what she remembered. Her face turned slightly red. Which home? Of course it is the capital of Seven Waters. Roja responded with a smile, but looked at Robin on the other side. Robin, do you want to come with us? Roja sent an invitation to Robin, and this time, he was sincere. As early as in his previous life, Roja liked Robin's wisdom very much, and his character who remained strong and calm no matter what happened. Since he happened to meet this time, he naturally doesn't mind pulling the other party to his side and changing the other party's fate, so he no longer has to avoid the pursuit of the navy. Well, yes, I just wanted to help her, absolutely nothing because of Robin's beauty. Suddenly, Robin's appearance in the original book appeared in his mind, as well as his enchanting figure. Roja blushed and coughed twice. Cough, how about it, do you want to come with us? Seeing that Robin was silent, Misaka Makoto and Shirai Kuroko also began to persuade. Robin, come with us. Yeah, Robin, come with us, the Seven Waters is beautiful there. Is it really possible? Robin suddenly whispered. I am O'Hara's demon, a person wanted by the Navy government. If the Navy knows that I am with you. Wanted by the Navy. Roja raised his eyebrows and chuckled softly. Accelerator standing beside Roja even snorted coldly, his face full of contempt. Haha, don't talk about the Navy, what if the 5 old stars came over in person? Tianqiu, who was sitting beside him, suddenly laughed out loud. "Little girl, don't worry, even if the world government knows you are here with us, it will be regarded as not knowing, because there is the leader and the adults of the Dimensional Brigade, they dare not." Gudong. Hearing Tian Chao's arrogant words, Robin couldn't help swallowing, feeling as if he had been smashed on the head by a golden pie covering the sky, and he was dizzy. If someone said that the world government did not dare to provoke a force, it is estimated that Robin would give him a blank look on the spot and treat it as a mental illness. But these words came out of the straight mouth of Tian Chou, and it was the Dimensional Brigade that he said, but he had to convince Robin. Shaking her head, Robin felt that the surprise came too suddenly. After being hunted and wanted by the Navy for so many years, she had long forgotten what it felt like to be 660 safe, and what a stable life was like. And now, is she finally safe? Can you live a normal life? And most importantly, backed by the Dimensional Brigade, she will be able to improve her strength and find the historical text in the future. This surprise was really too big, and for a while, Robin was a little overwhelmed, and even forgot to reply to Roha. They exaggerated a bit, but there's nothing wrong with it. Roha nodded and stretched out his hand to Robin. "How is it? Are you relieved this time?" Robin nodded hastily, as if afraid of Roha's repentance. At the same time, a never-before-seen smile suddenly appeared on Robin's face, as if a heavy burden had been lifted, and the whole person relaxed from the inside out. After taking Roha's hand and standing up, Robin stepped back and bowed generously to Roha. "Then, I will disturb you in the future." Chapter 180 Gundam, Transformers. An hour later, Roha finally returned to his home in the Seven Waters. No way, he not only brought back Masaka Makoto and others, but also transported the cadres of the Baroque Studio and Crocodile to Tianjin Yashang's laboratory. Originally, people from Shadow could do these tasks, but Roha was still a little worried. After all, if such a large number of mature fruit power users escaped, it would make him feel distressed for a long time. After looking at the progress of the test and the research progress of high-frequency weapons in Yashang Tianjing's laboratory, Roha came back. Looking at the drawing on the table, Roha smiled and sat down. Gundam has been serialized for more than half, and it won't be long before a new comic is released. The disappearance of Shichibuhai Crocodile did not cause much trouble. At this time, the world's attention is focused on the site where Kaido used to be the beast of the New World, as well as on the comic book called Gundam 00. Of Gundam 00, 90% of the settings have appeared in front of everyone's eyes, and in addition to the unheard and unseen high-tech world, there is one thing that has caused a huge monstrous giant in the world. Wave. Changemaker. The Changer is the existence of human evolution that appeared in Gundam 00, and is divided into purebred changers and improvers. It is manufactured by humans and through genetic modification. It has the ability of brain quantum waves mediated by GN particles, and can connect with the super quantum computer Veda. Not to mention the improvers. What really shocked everyone is the purebred changers. Purebred changers are naturally evolved from human beings and have more powerful brain quantum waves. After being stimulated, they can make people around them communicate with each other. The most important thing is that the aging degree of purebred changers is only 1/10 of that of ordinary people. Even 1%. Although purebred changers are far from immortal, they are enough to give humans a lifespan of hundreds or even thousands of years. For many, this is tantamount to eternal life. The world boils over when it comes to truly understanding the abilities of purebred changemakers. Whether it is a man in his prime, or an old man, whether it is a farmer who works hard, or a Tianlong person who rules the world, no one can resist the temptation of immortality. Tens of thousands of letters poured into Dream magazine from all over the world, without exception, all asking about the authenticity of purebred changers, and whether the Dimension Brigade has the ability to make people evolve into changers. Under such a general trend, even a group of people standing at the top of the world couldn't sit still and started discussions in private. Holy Land Mary Joa, the top of the world government headquarters. In a solemn and luxurious office, 4 old men were sitting around a round table, silent, and everyone was thinking. Finally, the irascible, blonde and golden-bearded Zobak couldn't help but say, "Do you think it's true about that changer?" "I think it's fake. No matter how strong the Dimension Brigade is, it's impossible to master that kind of technology. It is estimated that Gao Shi made up it casually," Miyamoto Yuenjai said with some disdain, holding the sword. Hearing this, the expressions of the few people on the side did not change, but there was some contempt in their hearts. At this point in their power, what the rest of the people did, basically everyone knew it well. During this time, Miyamoto Yuenjai madly dispatched people and came into contact with the Dimensional Brigade, and everyone saw it. Although I thought so in my heart, no one said anything. After all, it's better to keep things like figurines. I think it may be true, and I also think that the other party has not only mastered such technology, it is very likely that among them, there is a person who got off that boat. Amazing. After hearing his words, the pupils of the other 3 shrank, and their faces were horrified, and Zobak broke off a corner of the table with a click. No one cared about this precious table, but frantically pondered the words of Mito Zenomon in their minds. "You mean there are other survivors on that ship besides the Lord?" "Impossible. Didn't we ask long ago? There is no second survivor. Who knows what that person thinks? Those machines in the ship have not stopped working all these years. Maybe it is his backhand." Hearing this, several people fell silent, and Mito Frontier nodded solemnly. Indeed, if it weren't for this, it would be impossible to explain the comics of the Dimension Brigade that far surpassed this era, and their strength. When I suddenly heard Mito Chinwyman mention the Dimension Brigade, the atmosphere in the conference room became more and more heavy. It was not only the nightmare that was pressing in their hearts, but also the powerful force that now dominates the whole world. At this moment, Costello, who had been sitting in the first place and kept silent, suddenly stroked his 3-piece beard and spoke with a solemn expression. "Have you ever wondered what if a second ship landed here and never was found?" This. Zobak's pupils shrank, and finally he murmured in disbelief, "Impossible, after all, we have searched all over the world over the years." At the end of the day, Zobak himself was a little guilty. This world is too big, even the world government cannot fully control it, and many places have not yet been explored. If there is really a second ship, and it's still intact, then there will be a lot of trouble. Miyamoto Tanzai clenched the long sword in his hand as if looking for a sense of security. "How's the restoration going?" Costello asked suddenly. "The progress is slow. Without the part in Ralph Drew, it is really difficult to repair it with today's technology." Mito Chinwyman sighed. "Do your best." Costello shook his head and said again, "Let's not talk about this. At least the Dimensional Brigade has no sign of being an enemy of us yet. I propose to do my best to befriend them, even if we can't get change. We should try our best to win them over. Do you have any opinions?" Quote. "I have no opinion. Neither do I. That's it. The 4 of you look at me and say one sentence, which determines the direction of this matter." The last few people drafted a document and passed it to the hands of the warring states. Far away in the warring states period of Malin Fando, when he received the document from the 5 old stars, he couldn't help shrinking his pupils and exclaimed, "How can the 5 old stars agree to this?" Author P.S. The person mentioned in this chapter is not a traveler, but my background setting. After all, the comics Ralph drew in the 100 years that disappeared have not been explained. I can only come back by myself, sorry. Although one of the 5 old stars died, I feel that the 4 old stars are too ugly, so I will still call them 5 old stars in the future.